Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Josh, and you're here with us on the Open Book podcast for this morning. I hope everyone has had a great morning so far, and hopefully I can make it a little bit better for you. So I was reading last night. I was reading the book of Genesis, and Genesis 22 stood out to me as it shows God's first real test against like a person, and that person being Abraham. So as we look along right here, and we'll read and discuss, and it really shows his first test, and God is testing Abraham to see if he really follows the Lord as much as he says. It says, we'll start here. It says, sometime later God tested Abraham. He said to him, "Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. Then God said, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." Early the next morning, Abraham got up and loaded his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. He said to his servants, "Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you." So you want to ask yourself here, why would God come to Abraham here and say such a thing to sacrifice his one and only son for God? Why would he do that? And me being a little bit unfamiliar with this portion, with this chapter, is as Genesis isn't really talked about a lot after we get through the first couple chapters. So, I was reading, and it really stood. I was like, there's no way that this could be God talking to him and saying these things. But and as we read, we'll kind of understand why God has told him to do these things. But my first thought is, man, this is the devil telling him to do this. This is because God gave Isaac to Abraham as a gift. Because Abraham was so old in age, and with his wife Sarah being older as well, it was pretty much improbable for them to have a son. So God wanted Abraham to have a more of a legacy to leave behind. So Isaac was God-given, specifically to Abraham. But as I read, I asked myself, like, why would he want to do this? Why take his his offering to Abraham and sacrifice him and take his life? And as we read throughout this chapter, we will see why he does this. So we're here in verse 6. It says, Abraham took the wood from the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the 2 of them went together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, "Father?" "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. "The fire and wood are here," Isaac said, "but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the 2 of them went on together. When they reached the place God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar, on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. "Do not lay a hand on the boy," he said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld me with your son, your only son." Abraham looked up, and there was a thicket. He saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called that place, "The Lord will provide." And to this day it is said, "On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided." And this was God's true test, his first true test. And Abraham was tested very heavily here, because Abraham has been wanting a son for many years, and they were unsure that they were going to get a son until God blessed them with a son, Isaac. Yet God comes to him and tells him to sacrifice him. That just doesn't make any sense to me. It's really crazy to think that he would do something like that. But obviously, as we read, he prevented it from happening. But if the angel did not come down to Abraham, you could ask yourself, what would Abraham have done? Would he have actually done it? And I think, yes, he would have done it. He wouldn't have hesitated either. I don't believe he would hesitate at all to do it, because the Lord has told him to do such a thing. The Lord will provide is what Abraham called this place where he was going to ultimately sacrifice his son. And I think the Lord will provide is a great name for this place or this action, because I think it mainly refers to the action of what he did, because God told him to do something and he did it without hesitation. And a lot of people would never even do the simplest things if they were asked by God to do so. The simplest. And God asks us not to sin of these simplest of sins. Yet every day in, day out, we do these things continuously. And that is his test upon the human race ultimately. Is are you going to follow with the Lord and follow in his footsteps? And really, are you going to be able to pass the test? And when you pass the test, if you get an A+ on the test, you've done everything right. Then you have a place for you in heaven. The Lord has a place for you in heaven. And it is said in the scripture multiple times, and as we read yesterday, I believe it's the book of Mark, it said that as well. Jesus said that to many of the people. And people just don't pass the test. A lot of people don't pass the test. They attempt the test because they are indeed tested every single day. And the devil tests you every single day. You're tested by the devil day in and day out. And the tests by the devil are far, far worse than the tests from the Lord. Because the tests from the Lord are given explicitly on what you should and should not do, and how you should live your life living through Jesus Christ. Yet the devil's is hidden, and it's in disguise behind many of these things in our world. Especially today. Because, I mean, you look over back in the 1900s, primarily early, middle, I mean, just pre-phone, social media, all of that stuff. I mean, yes, you've had news, and that's part of media, but I'm specifically talking about like social media and these things that are so easy to get persuaded to people. These are the devil's tests, and humans have made these things, it's so much easier for the devil to test somebody every single day. And it might seem like the easier test, but in reality, it's not. Because the test that you see from the devil looks easy, while you look at the Lord's test, and it seems very difficult. And a lot of people don't like difficult nowadays. They choose the easy route, which is the devil's route. They choose the road, or we talked about the other day in one of our Open Bible podcasts about the different gates. The really large gate. And then we talk about the narrow gate. And the narrow gate is full of life. It's full of God. While the wide gate is full of death and deception. That's the devil's gate. Yet the devil is not the gatekeeper. No, the devil is not the gatekeeper at all whatsoever. He is hidden, as he does not want to show himself. He is far behind, far back, away from everybody. Because think when the devil or Lucifer, when he was cast into hell, the embarrassment that he had attained from that. And I still don't believe that he is fully over this embarrassment that the Lord gave him, ultimately. So he tries to take the Lord's people every single day. By making this large gate seem so appealing. And I'm sure a lot of people know what I mean when I say these things about this appealing gate that we see. But as we see here in the book of Genesis, when Abraham is tested, the hardest of tests that the Lord has given, he passes. Because he will go to any extent for the Lord. And as we kind of close up our podcast here today, I go to ask you, what extent are you willing to go to for the Lord? What are you willing to do to get to the Lord? Because when I tell you, a lot of people are scared of failure, and when you're scared of failure, you get uncomfortable. And we had a podcast 2 days ago, and the title was "Be Comfortable Being Uncomfortable." And that's what you need to do, because it's not comfortable out in the real world when you live through Jesus. And you live in the Lord's light. It is not easy whatsoever, especially nowadays where it is ultimately frowned upon. It's not taught in schools. It's not seen in the media. It's being censored. But as I was saying, what extent are you willing to go through and to for the Lord every single day? Hope everyone enjoyed the podcast, and I hope to see you tomorrow. Also hope everyone has a great day, and God bless.